Tonight, national security uncovers alleged fraudulent deals at school feeding program and implicates national coordinator who has tonight been asked to step aside. We have details including how 141,000 cedis was paid to fictitious caterers and the inflation of school enrollment figures.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
The Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. GASEM, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready, and nationwide medical health insurance. Your healthcare family. In the last few minutes, we're learning of a national security probe that has uncovered alleged fraudulent deals at the school feeding program and has implicated the national coordinator who has tonight been asked to step aside. We have details, including how 141,000 cedis was paid to fictitious caterers and the inflation of school enrollment figures. In fact, we have a letter that had been written by the gender minister to the national coordinator asking him to step aside, and this is also copied to the chief of staff. My colleague Elton Brobe has a copy of that and joins me with details. Elton, when was this letter written?
Once you're talking about that's today, 13 December 2018.
Okay, and what does it say?
In brief, addressed to the national coordinator, and it says that this is to inform you that the ministry has received a letter from the national security alerting us of some fraudulent deals going on in the school feeding program. They are as follows, according to a letter: payment to some caterers who have not been assigned to any school by the school feeding program. 2, inflation of enrollment figures of some schools under the school feeding program. Now, the third point, that catering contracts for some schools which do not exist but have been awarded to fictitious caterers who have been paid a total of 141,500 Ghana cedis for the third term of the 2017-2018 academic year. Some names of caterers were identified to be involved in the ongoing malfeasance with non-existing schools assigned to them. Inflation of enrollment figures of some schools under the school feeding program compared to the figures of the Ghana Education Service for the 2017-2018 academic year. The ministry has been asked to conduct an independent investigation into the above and take appropriate action. We are talking about this fictitious, payment and enrollment. Now, in view of the above, you are directed as the national coordinator to stop the regional monitoring exercise and step aside whilst the ministry carries out an independent investigation into the matter. Please prepare your handing over notes and hand over to your deputy by close of Friday, that's tomorrow, 14 December 2018. And this is signed by Cynthia Morrison, the Minister for Gender and Children Affairs.
So the coordinator of the school feeding program has just 24 hours to hand over, step aside, do a proper handing over notes. Dr. Kwame Edungsia, and leave the scene whilst the proper investigation is done. Of course, the investigation, from what we hear and from what we read, it appears the national security had already done its work and had alerted the gender ministry, because we know that the school feeding program is under the gender ministry, and the gender ministry is then mandated. And now that this has been copied to the ministry, the chief of staff's office, you get the impression that this is really widely being circulated. But of course, it's a minister who has to take the step of communicating official government decision to the coordinator for him to step aside. And a few of the things that captured in this letter are really fascinating. Inflation of enrollment figures of some schools under the school feeding program, and then also catering contracts for some schools which do not exist. And these are schools that do not exist, contracts given to fictitious caterers who simply do not exist, amounting to 141,075 CDs,
right?
And for the third term of 2017-2018, nobody has been convicted yet. These are all allegations as found by the National Security, for which reason the coordinator has been asked to step aside and for the ministry to also do its own verification of these as well. And we've tried to reach the national coordinator on this matter. He got back via text to say that we could call him back later. We tried that. We haven't been successful yet. We're still waiting to see if we can get that done and get some clarity on some of the allegations that have been made. But this is not the first time a national school feeding program is in the news for all the bad reasons. It's been one of those areas, a breeding ground for corruption for years. My colleague Kwete Nate spent time investigating the school feeding program and found many cases of abuse of the system by party functionaries who took contracts but did not deliver the job, but yet were still paid. And there were consequences of that, which is that children were dropping out. Enrollment figures were reducing because the school feeding program, remember why it was brought in? To encourage people to go to school. People were not going to school because they didn't have food to eat, and they brought it in as one of those measures to encourage parents to take their children to school because they will get food. It was part of this whole process of making the education system accessible and open. But we've seen, as this excerpt from the documentary shows, that it has been a very fertile ground for corruption.
The children are happy when they realize that we are cooking. They are always in the class when we start cooking. They know they will be fed. They know they will be fed when they come to school. We are facing a lot of challenges now. There are always shortages in the supply of foodstuffs. I'm tired. I've made up my mind to abrogate my contract with them.
These caterers have been offering various reasons why they've been unable to cook, though they have been paid. NDC Constituency Secretary Martin Nutife says he has not been able to cook because he used the monies paid him to clear loans he took from the bank.
Yeah, you see, I have the capacity, but I used all my money to pay for the school feeding, but I'm not receiving anything. Until the time they started paying us, I was indebted to some of the banks, and I had to pay that with a lot of interest. So that caused a lot of problem. That's it. I'm sourcing funds from the rural bank. If they grant it, I'll start cooking.
If they grant it, I will start afresh.
Former constituency chairman Ewu Kujobo says he does not cook because he has run out of money.
It's not true that we've not been cooking for the children. The challenge rather is that after pre-financing the program, we are not paid on time. That makes us run out of money. They only paid my arrears a few weeks ago. So how do I cook?
Current constituency chairman Richard Boama says his funds have been frozen by the assembly because he failed to provide meals for the children regularly.
They made deductions from the arrears I was paid recently. They claimed I have not been cooking. They deducted 42 million CDs from my funds. How do they expect me to cook? I have borrowed some foodstuffs from a relative to start cooking. I've asked the auditors to come and check whether or not I'm cooking.
According to the government, the institutional framework for implementing the school feeding program is designed to avoid corruption, embezzlement, and misapplication of funds. Public Relations Officer at the School Feeding Secretariat, Sipa Alpha, is confident of the checks put in place to ensure caterers are not paid for no work done.
It will be difficult for a caterer to swindle us, to be able to cheat the system.
And that documentary, it was a part of an investigative piece done by my investigative journalist colleague here, Kwete Nate, and this was done in 2016. Fast forward 2 years on, we're hearing of similar challenges still with the school feeding program. People simply abusing the process when there are lives of children at stake. Thankfully, the civil society group Send Ghana, they've been doing a lot of work on the school feeding program, investigating it, looking at the defects with the system and how sometimes it becomes it's been abused by political actors, etc. The deputy country director of Send Ghana is Emmanuel Ayifa, and joins us on the telephone line right now. Emmanuel, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you
for having me.
I know you've done a lot of work on the school feeding program. What did you find as far as its abuse is concerned?
Thank you once again. Then, as part of our work, we are into policy research and advocacy. And so we took it upon ourselves to assess the implementation of the school feeding program at the local level. Specifically, we sought to verify the number of people fed and the frequency. And that was done in 15 districts. And about almost 2 years ago, around later part of 2016, around the time in Ghana. And then the key highlights of our findings, one had to do with the fact that most of the caterers who were contracted by the assembly largely catered for one school. Notwithstanding the fact that the policy stipulates a daily feeding averagely, the school were fed only 3 times in a week. So that means that it wasn't every day that schools were fed. Students were fed. Within the week was 3 times. So they were short of the number of days that students were supposed to be fed. There were also issues about delayed reimbursement of funds to caterers. And obviously that then affected the frequency of feeding, as we highlighted in our report. Another key finding with respect to inconsistency in the school enrollment data provided by a directorate and school caterers. And this actually made it also difficult to determine the actual number of people that were fed and whether government actually paid the caterers for their service. So in terms of how many number of people that were fed and as to the number of people actually submitted to the authority, there were discrepancies.
As in these discrepancies, just on that point, as in these discrepancies leading to the numbers as was presented have been inflated, yes, or more than what it actually is on the ground?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's one key thing that we highlighted, and that was a major concern, that if there are inconsistencies in the school enrollment data provided by the directorate, that wouldn't help even in planning in terms of how much allocation needs to go to the schools. And for that matter, that one will obviously also affect even the feeding, how many feedings per week or per day. And then another thing that we highlighted from our research has to do with the fact that although in terms of adopting the model for caterers, in terms of service provision is laudable, appropriate storage facilities and quality of food prepared could not be guaranteed because we recognize the limited supervision or monitoring by the Ghana School Feeding Program. So monitoring and supervision was also quite low. And so we looked at it from the point that then that would even affect the quality of food that the caterers serve. So these are the major highlights, if you can call it so.
I see.
From our research.
But based on what you said, I wonder whether it surprises you to hear in 2018, based on this work done by the National Security, that there's still inflation of enrollment figures for some of the schools, and that we are still paying fictitious caterers, and that caterers who simply do not exist. Does it surprise you?
It doesn't, because we raised this issue Normally what happens is that once we undertake any research, we have a national dialogue. We first of all do district dialogue in the specific district that we did the research, and then there's a national dialogue. So we invite the interested stakeholders, and this wise the Ghana School Feeding Program, the ministry, and other people. And so we are expecting that they should have taken this further up. But then the fact is, as we even highlighted in one of our findings, that monitoring and supervision was very weak. And this is what we are witnessing now, fast forward 2018. So the fact that we even highlighted that in 2016, and up to now, nothing has been done. So it doesn't really come much as a surprise. The surprise, though, is that the ministry and the Ghana School Feeding in particular, they do have this report. So if the School Feeding Program Division were actually serious about some of these findings, then by now we thought that this should have been dealt with. But unfortunately, I think that they really did not follow up on some of our findings. That is the surprise.
And that raises the question about when was the work done? How long ago did you do this work?
It's not up to 2 years. It's almost 2 years. Almost, we are getting to 2 years now. So it was actually done around later part of 2016. That was when data collection and stuff like that started.
So tell me, based on what you know about the way the system works, is it the problem with the monitoring, the checks and balances? What is it about the structure, the way the school feeding system is structured, that allows this to happen?
That is exactly what I said about issue with monitoring.
So there isn't effective monitoring. Is it from the ministry or from who is the ministry's responsibility to monitor?
I would say first of all from even the school feeding program itself, because the unit, the Ghana School Feeding Program as a secretariat, needs to also monitor in terms of if schools submit, headmasters submit enrollment statistics. They need to also cross-check to find out whether truly the numbers actually is what exists in the school. So if you don't check and then you just use the numbers as given you, if there is some foul play, then you might not know. So monitoring one on the part of the Ghana School Feeding Program itself. And also, aside monitoring, there has to also be that collaborative effort with even the Ministry of Education to ensure that, yes, if these are the figures we are getting, then we have very good figures on the ground. And the fact that the ministry has a purview to supervise the school feeding program and then other relevant departments, then they also probably have a role to play in that.
So fundamentally, you think enhancing monitoring will be the solution to this alone, or there are other factors that we need to roll out to stop this from happening?
Aside monitoring, we need to crack the whip. The fact is that this is what has come up now. We are hearing the minister has asked, I think, the head or so to step aside. I mean, these are some of the things that would help. So we need also to crack the whip. If you realize that you identify certain loopholes, you need to make sure that people who are responsible are brought to book. Because if that is not done, then it gives a license for other people to repeat same mistakes. But the fact is that if I inflate figures and nothing is done to me, I'm not found culpable, nothing is done to me, then I'm going to continue with that. And people who are also within the same, let me say, remit are also going to do similar things because they know that after all, it was Mr. A, nothing was done to him, and so what is going to be done to me? Nothing. So these are some of the things that we feel that should be. So aside monitoring and supervision, there has to be that. Hello?
commitment to crack the whip, to punish people who are found culpable.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm grateful that you joined us. As the Deputy Country Director of Send Ghana, Emmanuel Yarif Oyifata. Still listen to Top Story. Another story we're following for you tonight, and this is one that surprised many when emerged, that in fact, in the last 24 hours, 6 flag bearer hopefuls of the National Democratic Congress have fired another petition to the party's Council of Elders demanding copies of the voters' register and a further reduction in the filing fees as they pledge to raise funds to help the party settle its bills. We have details of this, and my colleague Elton Brobe has a copy of this petition that was sent. Was it what? This was sent on the 8th December 2018. It's dated 8th December 2018.
Yeah, but was actually submitted this morning.
To the
office of the former President Jerry John Rawlings, who's chairman of the Council of Elders.
Let's put this in context. Right. The reason why many were taken aback by this is that just last week, we thought the issue had been resolved because we know the aspirants they have sent a first petition demanding a reduction. They got a reduction. They got a reduction from 400,000 to 300,000. They didn't get some of the things they asked for, i.e., asked the executives who were accused of being biased to step aside. They didn't get a reduction in the nomination, the fee for the nomination forms. Right. They didn't get a reduction. I mean, the time it takes for you to return the document, 10 days, it didn't get any reprieve there. But they got an extension of the time that the polling will be done. From the 19th to 24th of 27th, I think it was 26th. Forgive me, 26th of January of 2019. They don't seem satisfied, and that's why the second petition had gone in. What are they asking this time?
Because if you read this petition, they're creating the impression that after the meeting between the Council of Elders and the leadership of the national executives are yet to report back to the Council of Elders. So they are making fresh proposals to the Council of Elders to consider when the national executive report back to them. And I can just go straight to the proposals that they've put before Mr. Rawlings and his members on the council. They are saying that we propose a review of the guidelines for the conduct of the election as follows. 1, filing fee. We think that it is extremely important that the NDC's filing fee reflect our grassroots social democratic orientation. We also appreciate the party's difficult financial situation as explained by the General Secretary. We are more than happy to mobilize funds for the party as follows. Filing fee of 150,000 Ghana cedis as official and a minimum pledge of 50,000 Ghana cedis to be redeemed before polling day. We strongly recommend the NEC consider reducing the filing fee down to the 150,000 as proposed in consonance with the 50,000 and 100,000 cedis 2012 and 2016 respectively, Evans.
Thankfully, we've just been joined by one of the signatories to this particular petition, and this was signed by 6 of the aspirants of the flag bearer hopefuls: Alban Bagbing, Ekospio Gabra, Guzitano, Joshua Alabi, Sylvester Dinam Mensa, and Nuruddin Idrisu. Is Nuruddin Idrisu with 10? That's because he's on the phone lines with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Idrisu, for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you, Evans, and thank you to your listeners.
Should I take it then that you were not satisfied with the first intervention, the outcome of the first intervention of the National Council of Elders?
Not at all. This letter is meant to thank them for their swift response to our petition, first of all, and to remind them of the outstanding issues. Some of our reliefs couldn't have been addressed within 24 hours. So our understanding was that a subcommittee was set up to look into some of the reliefs. So we now sent a letter. In fact, this letter was actually meant to be confidential. So once we got it, I have to speak to it. So we now sent a gentle reminder on our reliefs. So really, there's nothing new in this one. It's meant to remind them, take into consideration that we have 1718 to file and pay out.
You make the point about there's nothing new in this. There's a lot new in this. In fact, first of all, you say that you're now making a pledge to contribute 50,000 cedis. This is a minimum pledge to redeem before polling day. That was in the first one. I mean, so how will this work if this is agreed to?
Well, based on our meeting with the Council of Elders on Thursday, we proposed that. So we are putting it on paper for them to look at. However, we want the Council of Elders and NEC to come out with their final position, which we've resolved to respect and proceed. So whatever they come out with, we'll respect it. If you look at one of our release, like imposing a 10-year membership eligibility requirement on the aspirants, it doesn't speak well because it looks like it's attacking a particular person. And taking into consideration, we are going into war with an elephant. We need to have a unified front. So such clauses must be taken out. And Council of Elders or NEC can't couldn't have worked on it within 24 hours. So we were given at least a week or two to get this resolved. So this letter is actually meant to, first of all, thank them and remind the Council of Elders that we are getting closer to the period and they should quickly respond. And that was our appeal. So trust me, most of this has been addressed. For example, the General Secretary, I spoke to him personally. So if you look at the register issue we raised,
that you want the register to be published and given to you 60 days prior to the elections. Did they assure that they'll give you the letter?
Absolutely. I got assurance from the General Secretary, and it's work in progress. That's why I said some of the release couldn't have been addressed within 24 hours. So this is not to kind of bring any disunity. It's just a gentle reminder to the Council of Elders and NEC. That is why we wanted this.
I'm just curious, and this is my final. If it's a gentle reminder, it presumes that you seem to feel that although there has been verbal commitments to do X, Y, Z, and the things that you said they've committed to do, you want this documented properly, so that this is not somebody saying it. You still want to push for this to be properly agreed by the party, at least the NEC, going forward.
Absolutely, Evans. We want it to be properly documented. Then we can have it, hold it, and work with it. And I must agree with the Council of Elders and the NEC that it couldn't have been done within 24 hours. So that's why we've given them about a week to look into it and come out with something documented that we can work with and agree and move forward. So it is a very peaceful document.
But I think, Mr. Idrisu, I think the fundamental concern, your first point, which is a further reduction of the filing fee, hasn't that been settled? I mean, that was the next main point in the letter they issued to the public, which is that it has been reduced from 400 to 300,000. And you've gone back with another petition asking it to reduce to 150,000. I thought that was settled.
Not really, because it was decided upon and we were advised. Well, some of us saw it on social media. So we now went and met the Council of Elders with NEC and put across these proposals. And a subcommittee was set up to look into it and revert within a week or two. So that is why we sent a follow-up letter, first of all, to thank them for their swift response and to remind them that we need it documented properly. Then we'll move. If you look at it after the meeting with NEC,
so if you don't get this documentation that you were asking for now and the concretization of it, what happens?
In fact, we are proceeding. Actually, we proceeded. We went ahead. We picked up our forms and we are getting it endorsed. Our forms endorsed, and we are carrying on with the process.
I'm grateful that you joined us. That's